Welcome to Calm Before Dreams, a quiet place where stories move slowly, and every word is meant to soften the edges of the day. Tonight, we step into a story called The Silent House That Remembered His Return, a gentle journey through memory, stillness, and the quiet spaces that wait without asking anything in return. Before we begin, I would love to know where you are listening from tonight. You can share your city or country in the comments below. There is something comforting in knowing that, somewhere across the world, someone else is listening under the same quiet sky. Now, find a comfortable position, let your breathing slow, and allow the outside world to fade just a little. This is your time to rest, and the house is already waiting. Tonight, I am stepping into a story that moves slowly, like a tide coming in beneath a patient moon. A story about a quiet return. About a place that never demanded anything from me, yet somehow remembered everything. There will be no rush here. No sharp edges. No loud surprises. Only a man, a road, and a house that has been standing through seasons and silence, as if it was made to hold one particular memory safe. As you read, you can let your breathing soften. Let the day loosen its grip. This story will keep a gentle pace, steady, calm, and warm in the way a single light glows through a window at night, promising nothing more than shelter. This is the silent house that remembered my return. I drive with both hands resting loosely on the steering wheel, not gripping, not tense, just present. The highway that carried me for hours now fades behind me, its wide lanes and steady noise dissolving as I turn onto a narrower road that feels more familiar to my muscles than I expected. The asphalt thins, the painted lines disappear, and the darkness seems to gather closer to the car, not in a threatening way, but in a quiet, enclosing way, like a blanket being drawn gently around tired shoulders. The engine hums steadily beneath me. It is the loudest thing left in the world. When I lower the window, the air shifts. Cool night air pours in, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. There is a trace of salt in it too, faint but unmistakable, as if the ocean has exhaled and the trees have chosen to keep the secret. I inhale slowly, and the breath feels different from the air in the city I left behind. Cleaner. Wider. Less handled. My shoulders lower a fraction without permission. I had not realized how high they had been. The road curves gently, never sharply, as though even it understands that there is no need to hurry. My headlights sweep across wooden fences silvered by weather. Across mailboxes that lean slightly but continue doing their simple work, across stretches of grass that ripple faintly when the wind passes through. The beams do not feel harsh here. They feel absorbed, softened by the dark. I ease my foot off the accelerator and let the car roll at its own patient pace. There is no one behind me. No one ahead. No pressure to keep up with anything. The silence between one passing tree and the next begins to stretch, and in that stretch I feel something inside me begin to uncoil. It is late autumn. The kind of night where the air carries a quiet clarity, where sound travels farther because there is so little to interrupt it. I pass the small wooden sign that marks the edge of Harbor Creek. The letters are reflective, briefly bright in my headlights, then gone again as I move beyond them. Harbor Creek. I say the name in my mind, not aloud. It feels both distant and immediate, like a word I once knew by heart and then stored somewhere deep. The town is already asleep. No lights in the storefront windows. No movement on the sidewalks. Just a few porch lights glowing low and steady, like watchful eyes that have no intention of interfering. The diner sits dark and square at the corner. The marina beyond it is invisible from here, but I know the boats are resting against their ropes, rising and falling gently with the tide. I drive past streets I once ran down without thinking. Past the turn that leads to the elementary school playground. Past the narrow lane that winds toward the cliffs. Each one feels smaller than I remember, but not diminished. Simply scaled to truth, the farther I go, the fewer houses remain. Trees gather more densely on either side of the road, their trunks tall and steady, their tops whispering to one another in a language made of wind. The gravel begins where the asphalt ends, a subtle shift beneath my tires. The sound changes, less smooth, more textured. I slow again, instinctively. At last, I turn onto Harbor Creek Road. The name is not marked anymore. The old sign fell years ago, I was told once in passing. But I know the curve of it, the way it bends slightly left before straightening toward the coast. The car moves carefully now, tires pressing into gravel, stones shifting softly beneath the weight, and then, almost without ceremony, I see it. At the end of the road, partially veiled by trees, stands the house. It does not appear dramatic. It does not glow. It simply exists, pale against the darker line of forest behind it. The porch roof slopes gently. The windows are dark. The shape of it is exactly as my memory left it. Though smaller somehow, as though time has trimmed away the exaggerations I once carried, I pull the car to a stop beneath the leaning cedar near the fence. The engine ticks as it cools when I turn the key and remove it from the ignition. The sudden absence of mechanical sound is almost startling. Silence settles fully now, not empty silence, layered silence, the faint hush of wind through pine needles. The distant, steady rhythm of waves striking shore beyond the trees. The small, natural sounds of a place that continues living whether I am present or not. I sit there for a moment with my hands still resting on the steering wheel. My reflection stares back faintly from the dark windshield, superimposed over the outline of the house. I do not rush to open the door. Instead, I allow the quiet to press gently around me, to test whether I am willing to match its pace. After a while, I reach for the handle and step out into the night. The gravel shifts beneath my boots with a sound that feels both foreign and deeply familiar. The air touches my face, cool and awake-making. I close the car door softly, careful not to let it slam, as if loudness might undo something fragile in this moment. The house stands ahead, unchanged in posture. Waiting is not quite the right word, it simply remains. I stand for a long moment beside the car, letting my eyes adjust to the dark without the interference of headlights. The house rests at the end of the gravel drive, its pale siding faintly visible beneath the washed silver of moonlight. The porch roof slopes in the same gentle angle I remember, and the narrow steps lead upward with a quiet patience, as if they have nowhere else to be. Beyond the house, past the thin line of trees, I can sense the ocean. I cannot see it from here, but its presence moves through the air, steady and rhythmic, like breathing too large to belong to any one body. It is well past midnight in Harbor Creek. The town sleeps in the uncomplicated way small towns do, without the hum of traffic or the flicker of distant high-rise windows. A few porch lights glow softly along the main road, left on out of habit rather than necessity. The marina will be still now, ropes gently pulling against cleats as boats shift with the tide. The diner's sign, dark and square, holds its place at the corner without announcement. Everything here knows how to be quiet. Late autumn has thinned the trees just enough to let the moon pass through their branches. Leaves scatter across the yard in soft drifts, collecting along the fence line and against the porch steps. The grass is slightly overgrown but not wild, bending with the wind instead of resisting it. The air carries that particular clarity that comes before winter, a cool steadiness that feels clean in the lungs and sharp along the edges of thought. I draw in a slow breath and let it leave me without hurry. This place has existed in my memory as something larger than it is, stretched by distance and years. But standing here now, I see its true proportions. The house is modest. 2 stories. Narrow windows. A chimney that leans just slightly to one side. It has never tried to be impressive. It was built to shelter, nothing more, and it has done that quietly through seasons of rain and salt and wind. I walk a few steps forward, gravel shifting beneath my boots. The sound feels amplified in the stillness, as though the night itself is listening. I pause again, not out of hesitation, but out of recognition. I know this yard. I know the slope of it, the slight dip near the fence where water gathers during heavy rain. I know where the cedar roots press close to the surface of the soil. My body remembers what my mind had stored away. Somewhere in town, a dog turns in its sleep and lets out a soft, uncertain huff. The sound drifts and disappears. A loose shutter on a distant house taps once, then settles. The world does not react to my return with ceremony. It simply continues. I realize that is what unsettles me most, not the silence, but the continuity. Harbor Creek did not pause when I left. The tides came and went. The fishermen rose before dawn. Children grew taller. The hardware store opened and closed each day with its small bell ringing faithfully. Life moved in loops, steady and circular, and I moved in straight lines, away from it. I slip my hands into my jacket pockets and tilt my head back slightly, looking at the sky. The clouds drift thinly across the stars, never fully covering them. I used to stand on this very patch of ground as a teenager, imagining the world beyond the horizon as something loud and immediate. I believed that leaving was the only way to expand. I did not understand then that expansion can sometimes thin a person out. The wind moves again, brushing through the tops of the pines. The sound is soft, almost conversational. I lower my gaze back to the house. No lights burn inside. No curtains shift. The windows reflect only the sky and the faint outline of trees. Yet the house does not appear abandoned. It appears paused, as if holding a breath it has no reason to release. I step closer to the porch. The wooden boards look weathered but steady, their paint faded into a muted gray-blue that blends with the night. The railing is intact. One spindle is slightly crooked, just as it always was. I remember meaning to fix it once. I never did. The front door stands at the center, solid and plain. The brass handle catches a thin line of moonlight. I stop at the bottom step. There is a peculiar stillness here, not heavy, not oppressive. Simply present. The kind of stillness that forms when a place has long since stopped expecting anything to change. I lift my foot and place it on the first step. The wood creaks softly beneath my weight, a single note of recognition rather than complaint. I take another step, then another, until I am standing on the porch itself. The boards feel firm beneath me. Familiar. For a moment, I close my eyes. The air carries pine and salt and something older, aged wood, dry leaves, the faint trace of time itself. I let the scent settle into me. My breathing slows naturally, syncing with the distant rhythm of waves I still cannot see. When I open my eyes again, the door is directly in front of me. Close enough to touch. I do not reach for it yet. Instead, I stand there in the quiet, allowing the place and the hour and the weight of years to align gently around me, as if the night is adjusting its shape to fit my return. Harbor Creek has always been the kind of town where mornings begin before anyone feels fully awake. The light arrives slowly here, filtered through pine branches and low coastal cloud, and people rise with it as if they have made a quiet agreement with the day. I remember the sound of screen doors opening, the soft scrape of boots on porch steps, and the first kettle of coffee starting its patient work. No one used to rush, even when there was plenty to do. The movement was steady, measured, like hands that know the shape of their tasks. In town there is a small grocery store with a bell that rings when you enter, a bright little chime that sounds almost cheerful against the hush of early hours. The aisles are narrow, the shelves simple, and the same faces appear often enough that names become unnecessary. There is a diner with windows that fog in winter and glow gold in summer, serving breakfast all day because someone, somewhere, is always hungry at the wrong hour. The hardware shop smells of cut lumber and metal, and the owner can usually guess what you need from a few half-finished words, because everyone in a place like this learns to repair more than they replace. Most people here work with their hands, and they do it without making a performance of it. Some fish, waking long before sunrise, loading coolers, checking lines, listening to the weather like it is a language they have known since childhood. Some repair boats, sandpapering old paint, replacing worn rope, tapping quietly along holes as if the wood might answer. Some keep small rentals for summer visitors who come for the ocean and leave again when the rain returns, folding towels, sweeping porches, making everything look effortless even when it is not. Life moves in loops: work, meals, weather, sleep. The same things, again and again, but never exactly the same. The tide is always shifting. The wind never repeats itself perfectly. The seasons pass like familiar faces, changing clothes and expressions but keeping the same bones beneath. In Harbor Creek, time is not something you fight. Time is something you live inside, something you accept the way you accept the ocean being cold even in July. I have not lived inside that kind of time for a long while. In the years I was gone, I learned other rhythms. I learned the bright insistence of cities, the way people talk over one another, the way calendars fill, the way silence becomes something you have to chase down and capture. I learned to measure my days in deadlines and distances and crowded streets. I told myself it was progress. I told myself it meant I was moving forward, but standing here now, with gravel under my boots and pine scent in the air, I can feel the older rhythm underneath my ribs, waiting like a song I forgot I knew. It is not dramatic. It does not grab me by the collar. It simply returns, quiet and steady, as if it has been here the entire time, patient enough to outlast my distractions. The house in front of me belongs to that slower world. It belongs to mornings that start with light instead of alarms, to evenings where the most important sound is a pot settling on a stove. It belongs to hands that mend, to voices that do not demand, to days that end without a sense of being chased. I look at the porch again and think of ordinary things, the way my mother used to shake a rug out over the railing, the way my brother once fell asleep on the steps with his shoes still on, the way I used to leave the door open on warm nights and trust that nothing would come in except air. Ordinary life, I realize, can be its own kind of shelter, and maybe that is why my chest feels the way it does now, not tight exactly, not aching, just full, as if I am remembering how to make space for something simple again. If I had arrived in daylight, my return would not have gone unnoticed. Harbor Creek has never been a place where movement escapes attention. Not because people pry, but because patterns matter here, and anything that shifts the pattern is felt the way a stone is felt in the sole of a shoe. Subtle. Immediate. Personal. Grace would have seen me first, most likely. She walks her golden retriever every morning at the same unhurried pace, her shoes sensible, her sweater buttoned no matter the season. She pauses at the bend in Harbor Creek Road where the trees open slightly toward the water, letting the dog sniff the grass while she looks out at something only she seems to measure. If my car had been parked beneath the cedar in daylight, she would have noticed the unfamiliar shine of it. She would not have stared. She would simply have taken note, the way she takes note of tide levels and migrating birds. Eli from the marina might have seen me too. He works long hours sanding hulls and checking lines, his hands permanently smelling faintly of rope and salt. In the afternoons, when the dock grows quiet, he leans against a piling and watches the horizon as if waiting for something that never quite arrives. He grew up here, just like I did, though we rarely spoke beyond the easy shorthand of boys who shared the same geography. If he had driven past and seen my silhouette near the porch, he might have slowed slightly. Not to intrude. Just to confirm what his eyes were telling him, and Mason, at the diner, would have heard about it before noon. He keeps coffee ready even when the booths are empty, because someone always comes in eventually. News in Harbor Creek travels without urgency, carried in the space between refilling cups and wiping counters. Daniel Mercer's car was seen on Harbor Creek Road, someone would say, not loudly, not with judgment. Just as a fact entering the room, they all know this house, they know its paint once held a deeper shade of blue. They know the chimney leans a fraction more after heavy storms. They know the yard used to be trimmed more regularly, that laughter once drifted from the porch on summer evenings. In a small town, houses are not just structures. They are stories told over years, layered with memory. People do not forget them, even when they stop speaking about them directly. But tonight, no one sees me. The town remains asleep, wrapped in its own breathing. There are no passing headlights. No footsteps on gravel beyond my own. The only witness to my presence is the steady dark and the faint outline of trees shifting in the wind, and yet, I feel observed, not by people, but by place. The cedar beside the fence creaks softly, its branches brushing against one another in the breeze. The porch boards settle under the cooling air. Somewhere beyond the house, the ocean continues its patient rhythm. None of it reacts sharply. None of it startles. It simply adjusts, as if acknowledging a small change in weight. I realize then that Harbor Creek does not demand explanations. It never did. When people leave, the town absorbs the absence the way sand absorbs a footprint. When they return, it does not ask for justification. It simply makes space. I slip my hands deeper into my jacket pockets and take another slow step forward. The gravel answers beneath my boots, each shift a quiet confirmation that I am, in fact, here. If someone were watching from a distant window, they might see only a man standing in front of an old house, hesitating before a door. They would not see the years that sit between the boards and my knuckles. They would not feel the subtle recalibration happening inside my chest. But the town, in its own way, feels it. Harbor Creek has always held its people gently, without gripping too tightly. It allows departure. It allows return. It does not rearrange itself dramatically for either. Standing here now, I sense that same gentleness directed toward me. No welcome banner. No accusation. Just quiet room to exist. The porch waits a few steps away, and beyond at the door. Behind the door, air that has not moved in some time. I draw in a slow breath, steady and deliberate, then I walk toward the steps, aware that whether anyone witnesses it or not, this small movement is enough to shift the shape of the night. The porch steps rise in front of me, 3 broad boards weathered into a soft gray that almost matches the sky. I pause at the bottom, studying the grain of the wood as if it might offer instruction. Time has marked it gently, fine cracks, a slight bow at the center, a nail head darkened by rain. Nothing dramatic. Nothing broken. Just the quiet evidence of seasons doing what seasons always do. I place my foot on the first step. The board answers with a low creak, not sharp, not protesting. It sounds more like recognition than strain. I shift my weight fully, then lift myself to the second step. The air feels cooler here, closer to the door, as if the house keeps its own pocket of stillness. When I reach the porch, I stop again. Up close, the details return with unsettling clarity. The railing spindle I once meant to fix still leans slightly inward. The paint along the trim has thinned where years of wind pressed against it. A faint outline remains where a hanging plant used to sway in summer, leaving a pale circle against the siding. I remember that plant. I remember watering it without thinking, the soil darkening, the leaves trembling in the breeze. I remember believing that tending something small meant I understood responsibility. I smile faintly at the thought, not unkindly. The front door stands directly in front of me now. It is solid oak, darker than the siding, with a brass handle dulled by touch. I can see faint smudges near the edge where hands have pushed it open countless times. My own hand hovers in the air for a moment before settling against the wood. The surface is cool. I did not expect that detail to matter, but it does. The coolness feels real, grounding. The door does not feel abandoned. It feels at rest. I close my eyes briefly, allowing memory to surface without forcing it. I see myself at 17, standing here with a duffel bag slung over my shoulder, convinced that leaving was the only way to expand my world. I remember the impatience in my chest, the restless energy that made the porch seem too small. The town too contained. Back then, I locked this door with finality. I remember turning the key firmly, hearing the click, telling myself I would not need it again. Now, years later, my fingers wrap around the handle. I expect resistance. I expect the stubbornness of a lock left untouched for too long. But when I press down gently, the latch yields. The door opens without protest. For a moment, I simply stand there. The door slightly ajar, a narrow slice of darkness visible inside. The air that slips out carries a faint scent of wood and old fabric, a stillness that has settled deeply but not unpleasantly. It smells like a room closed carefully, not abandoned in haste. I step across the threshold. The floorboards beneath my boots feel firm, familiar in their slight unevenness. I close the door behind me with care. The click of it shutting is soft, almost muted, yet it feels significant, like the final piece of a quiet circle falling into place. Inside, the darkness is layered, not absolute. Moonlight filters through the windows in pale strips, revealing shapes gradually. The outline of the small entry table. The coat hooks along the wall. The faint gleam of a picture frame catching light. I stand still, allowing my eyes to adjust. The house holds its breath around me, but not in tension. More in acknowledgement. As if it is registering the return of a familiar weight, I take a slow step forward. Dust does not rise dramatically. The air does not swirl. Everything remains calm, settled. The silence inside feels different from the silence outside, thicker, more intimate. It wraps around my shoulders and rests there. I remove my jacket and drape it over the back of the chair near the door. The motion feels instinctive, practiced long ago. The chair accepts the weight without complaint. There is no electricity running now. No hum of appliances. No distant ticking of a clock. Only the faint shift of wood as the house adjusts to the subtle change in temperature from the open door. I move further into the living room. The fireplace stands against the far wall, its stone face pale in the moonlight. The hearth is clean. Neater than I expect. A small stack of dry wood rests inside, arranged carefully, almost deliberately. I do not remember placing it there. I kneel slightly, touching one of the logs. It is dry, ready. A quiet ripple passes through me, not fear, not alarm. Just awareness. The house has not fallen into ruin, it has been tended, not visibly. Not dramatically, but enough. I rise slowly, turning in a full circle, taking in the room. The furniture remains in its familiar positions. The small table near the window. The bookshelf along the wall. The chair angled toward the hearth. Nothing has been rearranged, nothing erased. The weight of reality settles gently over me then, not heavy, not crushing, but steady. Time has moved. Years have passed. I have changed in ways I am still discovering, and yet, this space has held its shape. I walk toward the fireplace and rest my hand on the mantel. The wood beneath my palm feels solid, dependable. A quiet anchor in the dim light. For a long moment, I simply stand there, listening to the silence inside the house, letting it settle into me the way dust settles onto a still surface. Outside, the ocean continues its distant rhythm. Inside, the house does not speak. It does not need to. It has already opened. I remain standing near the mantel for a long while, my hand resting against the wood as if I am steadying myself against something that does not move. The moonlight stretches across the floor in pale bands, shifting almost imperceptibly as clouds drift overhead. The house feels neither cold nor warm, simply paused in a temperature that belongs to night. I become aware of my own breathing again, slow and even. And of the way each inhale seems to echo faintly in the stillness. Time behaves differently inside these walls. Outside, years passed in visible ways, paint fading, boards softening, grass growing taller between cuts. Inside, time feels layered rather than lost. It has collected quietly in corners, in the spaces between furniture and along the edges of shelves. Not as neglect, but as accumulation. As patience, I step away from the fireplace and move further into the room. The chair near the hearth remains angled slightly inward, as if someone once sat there and rose with the intention of returning. I brush my fingers lightly along its back. A thin trace of dust marks my skin, but the fabric beneath is intact. The cushion yields slightly when I press it, remembering weight even if it has not felt it recently. I walk toward the window and look out. From here, the trees are darker shapes against a deeper sky. The gravel drive is barely visible, but I know it's curved by heart. Somewhere beyond the tree line, the ocean continues its steady conversation with the shore. I cannot hear individual waves from this distance, only the low, constant rhythm that blends into the wind. Seasons have passed through this room without ceremony. Rain must have tapped against the glass in long, patient patterns. Wind must have pressed against the siding, testing its resilience. Winter frost would have traced delicate lines across these windows, only to vanish with the first light of morning. Spring birds likely perched along the porch rail, claiming it briefly before lifting away again. The house has known all of this without me. That realization does not sting the way I once thought it might. Instead, it settles into something steadier, a recognition that life continues whether or not I witness it. The absence of drama feels almost comforting. I move toward the hallway that leads deeper into the house. Each step produces a soft creak beneath my boots. A familiar language of wood adjusting to weight. The sound is not loud enough to disturb the quiet, only enough to confirm that the floor still remembers how to hold someone. On the wall beside the hallway hangs a small calendar, still turned to the month I left. The pages beneath it are untouched, pressed flat against one another as though they have been waiting for a hand to flip them forward. I stand there for a moment, studying the date printed in dark ink. It feels distant and immediate at once, a marker from another version of myself. I do not turn the page. Instead, I let my gaze drift upward to the ceiling, where a faint crack runs along the corner near the light fixture. I remember noticing it years ago and deciding it was harmless. It appears unchanged, neither widened nor repaired. Time has passed around it without insistence. Further down the hallway, the bedroom door stands slightly ajar. I approach it slowly, not out of fear, but out of respect for the quiet that has settled here. The hinges whisper softly as I nudge it open. Inside, the bed remains neatly made, the quilt smoothed flat as if careful hands arranged it before stepping away. The dresser stands against the far wall, its surface clear except for a small framed photograph turned slightly toward the window. I cross the room and lift the frame gently. It holds an image of 3 figures standing near the shore, my mother, my brother, and me. The ocean stretches behind us, bright in daylight, wind pulling at our jackets. I remember that afternoon. I remember the cold sand beneath my shoes, the way my brother laughed at something I no longer recall. I set the frame back in its place. The house does not press memory upon me, it simply offers it, quietly, as one might offer a cup of tea without commentary. I return to the hallway and back toward the living room. Moving more slowly now. The sense of intrusion has faded. In its place is a gentle familiarity, as if the house has recognized the pattern of my steps and adjusted accordingly. Time here has not stopped, it has flowed softly, without witness, without demand, and now, standing once more beside the fireplace, I feel that flow moving through me as well, steady, unhurried, neither dragging me backward nor pushing me forward, only reminding me that some places do not forget. They simply wait in stillness, allowing time to pass through them the way wind passes through trees, leaving no visible mark but altering everything just enough to matter. Back in the living room, the moonlight has shifted, and the bands of pale brightness on the floor now fall closer to the hearth. I notice it the way you notice a clock only after it has been quiet for a long time. The house is still listening, still holding its calm, and I move through it as if I'm trying not to startle anything that has been resting. That is when I see the photographs. They hang along the wall above the small side table, exactly where they always were, simple frames, evenly spaced, not arranged for effect, only placed with the practical care of someone who wanted them visible. In the dim light, the glass catches a faint shimmer, and the faces inside the frame seem to float forward gently, softened by shadow. I step closer. My mother is in the first one, standing on the back steps with her hair pinned up and a dish towel over her shoulder. She is smiling the way she used to smile when she'd finished doing something that mattered, even if it was only washing up after dinner. The porch behind her looks brighter than it does now, and the railing is painted in that older shade of blue. I can almost hear the screen door, the familiar squeak it made when it swung shut. The next frame holds my brother, younger than I remember him being, his hands gripping a fishing rod that looks nearly as tall as he is. The line is tangled. His grin is wide and unapologetic, as if he has never considered that anything could go wrong that couldn't be laughed at. I feel a quiet, tender ache rise in my chest, not sharp enough to hurt, only deep enough to remind me that time has weight. Then there is the photo with me in it. I am tall and awkward, shoulders slightly hunched, as if I'm trying to occupy less space than my body requires. My face is serious in that way teenagers sometimes are, believing seriousness will protect them from being seen too clearly. I stand between them with my hands shoved into my pockets, trying to look indifferent while leaning subtly toward my mother without admitting it. I stare at that version of myself for a long moment, not with judgment, with a kind of quiet curiosity, like looking at a younger relative you haven't met in years and realizing you can still recognize the shape of their smile. As I lean closer, I notice something small that makes the room tilt gently inside me. The frames are cleaner than they should be, not polished bright, not newly dusted, just touched. The glass is mostly clear, the dust along the top edges minimal. Someone has wiped them down at some point, maybe with a sleeve, maybe with a cloth, the way people do when they pass by and feel the urge to care for something without turning it into a ceremony. My throat tightens slightly. I don't force a thought into words. I don't try to solve it right now. I simply let the feeling exist, contained and quiet, like a candle flame held steady behind glass. I glance toward the side table beneath the photographs. A small bowl sits there, empty now, but I remember it holding keys once. Next to it is a lamp with a pale shade. I reach for the lamp switch out of habit, then pause, remembering there is no power. The gesture still feels meaningful, though, my hand hovering. My body acting on old routines without needing permission. The house seems full of these routines, the chair by the fireplace angled just so. The blanket folded over its arm. The way the rug lies slightly crooked near the doorway, as if someone nudged it with a foot and never bothered to straighten it because it still did its job. I walk to the bookshelf and run my fingers along the spines. Some titles I recognize immediately, their worn edges familiar: a field guide to coastal birds, an old cookbook with notes in the margins, a paperback my mother reread every winter. Others are newer, or at least unfamiliar to me, which makes me pause again. I don't pull them out yet. I just note them. The way you note a new wrinkle in a familiar face. Near the mantel, I spot the matchbox, the same blue cardboard brand my mother used to buy because, as she'd said, the cheap ones snapped too easily. I pick it up and shake it gently. The faint rattle inside tells me there are still matches left. It's such a small thing, and yet it makes the room feel less like a preserved memory and more like a place that has continued being itself in quiet increments. I set the matchbox back down and look around once more. The stillness is not emptiness. It is presence. A calm, steady kind of presence that does not demand I explain who I have become or why I stayed away. I feel the house holding all of it without comment. I let my shoulders drop again, slower this time, more deliberately. I let my jaw unclench. I let my breath deepen, and in that simple loosening, I understand something I didn't expect to understand tonight, that human moments do not always arrive with noise. Sometimes they arrive as clean glass on a photograph frame, as a blanket folded neatly, as a matchbox left where a hand will find it. Sometimes they arrive as a house remembering the shape of care. I stand for a moment longer in front of the photographs, letting the quiet settle back into its natural rhythm. The house does not press me to linger there, and it does not urge me away. It simply holds the space as it always has. After a while, my gaze drifts again toward the fireplace, toward the small stack of wood arranged inside as if someone anticipated a night exactly like this one. I move slowly, aware of each step against the floorboards. The hearth is clean. The logs are placed with care, two at the base, one angled gently across them, kindling tucked between in a way that suggests intention rather than accident. I crouch slightly and rest my hand against the nearest log. It is dry to the touch. Not brittle. Ready, I sit back on my heels for a moment, studying the arrangement. I do not remember stacking it this way. I remember carrying wood in from the side of the house, brushing bark dust from my sleeves, kneeling here to build a small fire on cold evenings. But this stack feels recent enough to matter. I reach up and take the matchbox from the mantel. The cardboard is worn at the corners, the blue faded into something softer. I slide one match free and pause before striking it, listening to the room as if it might object. It does not. The strike of the match is crisp in the stillness, a brief bright sound followed by the bloom of flame. For a second, the light is almost startling, gold and immediate, casting quick shadows against the stone. I shield it gently with my hand and lower it toward the kindling. The flame touches wood. There is a small hesitation, a moment where nothing seems to happen, and then a thin thread of smoke curls upward. The kindling darkens, then catches, a quiet whisper of fire spreading along the smallest pieces first. I remain crouched, watching. The fire does not leap dramatically. It grows with patience, feeding on what is offered, taking its time. The angled log begins to warm, its surface shifting from dull brown to a faint glow at the edges. The sound is soft, a faint crackle, a subtle pop. Nothing sharp. Nothing violent. I sit back and let the fire continue its work. Warmth begins to gather slowly in the room, almost imperceptible at first. It brushes against my hands, then my face, then settles lightly across my shoulders. The stone of the hearth reflects the light outward, turning the walls from flat shadow into something alive with gentle movement. The photographs catch the firelight differently than they caught the moonlight. The glass glows faintly now, the faces inside warmed into softer expressions. The chair beside the hearth seems less distant, more inviting, as if it has been waiting for this exact shift in temperature. I rise and lower myself into the chair. The cushion gives beneath me, not dramatically, just enough to acknowledge weight. The fabric is cool at first, then gradually warms where my body meets it. I rest my forearms on my knees and look into the fire. The flames move without urgency, bending and straightening in quiet patterns. They illuminate the edges of the room and then retreat, only to reach outward again. Shadows soften. Corners lose their sharpness. The entire space feels less like a preserved memory and more like a living room once more. I exhale slowly. The breath leaves me in a steady stream, and I realize I have been holding something in my chest for longer than I understood. Not tension exactly. More like readiness. A brace against noise that never arrived. Here, there is no noise to brace against, only firelight, only the low murmur of wood shifting as it settles deeper into flame. Outside, the wind continues through the trees, but it feels distant now, filtered by walls and warmed by stone. The ocean's rhythm is still present, but it blends into the background, a constant reminder that the world is large and steady and moving at its own pace. I lean back into the chair fully, the warmth spreads gradually, reaching my hands. My arms, the center of my chest. My shoulders release one layer at a time, not collapsing, just easing. My jaw softens. My breath deepens without effort. In this light, the room no longer feels paused, it feels inhabited. The fire reflects in the window glass, doubling itself briefly, so that it appears there are two hearths, one real, one illusion, burning in quiet symmetry. I watch the reflection for a while, letting my eyes drift between flame and shadow. Nothing dramatic happens. There is no sudden realization, no overwhelming wave of memory. There is only the steady presence of warmth returning to old boards and old air. I let my head rest against the back of the chair. The cushion supports me without complaint. The house settles around the growing heat, wood expanding softly, beams adjusting in low, almost conversational creaks. It sounds less like a structure and more like breathing. I match it, slow inhale, slow exhale. The fire continues its patient work, and I allow myself, for the first time since turning onto Harbor Creek Road, to stop moving entirely, just sitting, just breathing, just letting the light fill the room without asking it to explain anything at all. I look at the photographs again, but differently now, as if the fire has changed not only the room but the distance between then and now. In the steady glow, their edges soften. My mother's smile is no longer a picture trapped behind glass. It feels like a small light left burning in a window, meant for anyone who might find their way back. My brother's grin looks less like a memory and more like a kind of permission to be imperfect, to return tangled, to still be welcomed by the simple fact of being here. I sit in the chair beside the hearth and let the warmth reach deeper, not hurrying it, not asking it to fix anything. The heat gathers in my hands first, then slides up my wrists, into my forearms, and finally settles in the center of my chest. I feel my breathing slow until it becomes almost unnoticeable. The house makes small sounds as it adjusts, the soft settling of wood, the faint tick of the mantle warming, the quiet expansion of boards that have been cold for too long. None of it is loud. None of it insists. It is the language of a place remembering how to be lived in. Outside, the night remains wide and patient. The wind moves through the pines with a steady hush, and somewhere beyond them the ocean continues its long work, wave after wave, never in a hurry to arrive anywhere else. I can't see the water from this room, but I can feel the rhythm of it through the air. The way you can feel a distant train through the ground before you ever hear it. That rhythm calms something in me that has been restless for years without knowing why. I shift slightly in the chair and notice how familiar the movement feels. My body remembers this posture, knees angled toward the fire, shoulders loosened, hands open instead of clenched. It is strange how quickly the old habits return when the right conditions meet them. I had thought I'd outgrown this place. I had thought leaving meant I'd shed it, like a coat that no longer fit. But sitting here, I realize I never truly shed it. I simply wore other things over it, layers of noise and motion and bright distraction. The house does not ask me where I went. It does not ask why I stayed away. It does not ask what I did with all that time. It only holds the space, steady as a shoreline, letting me arrive in whatever shape I have taken. And that gentleness, quiet, unremarkable, persistent, feels almost like forgiveness without the word ever being spoken. I look down at my hands. In the firelight, they look older than I expect. Knuckles more pronounced, skin a little rougher, faint lines I don't remember earning. I flex my fingers slowly, as if testing whether they still belong to me. They do. And yet they have carried things I never carried here, keys to apartments with unfamiliar locks, cups of coffee grabbed too quickly, steering wheels on roads that did not know my name. I let that thought pass through me without gripping it. This is not a night for accounting. This is not a night for explaining. It is a night for being here. The flames shift as a log settles deeper into the coals. A small shower of sparks rises and vanishes, delicate and brief. The room glows, then dims, then glows again as the fire takes another slow breath. I feel my eyelids grow heavier, not from exhaustion exactly, but from safety, the kind of safety that lets the body stop scanning for what might happen next. Because nothing needs to happen next. There is no dramatic reunion waiting in the next room, no sudden knock at the door, no sharp turn in the quiet. If morning comes, it will come the way it always does here, gradually, with pale light filtering through branches, with the town waking in its steady loops. And if morning does not come quickly, that is fine too. I lean my head back and let the chair support the full weight of me. The cushion seems to remember, or perhaps it simply does what cushions do: accept, hold, soften. The house remains silent, but its silence does not feel empty. It feels full, full of the ordinary life that once moved through these rooms, full of small acts of care, full of time passing without spite. In the firelight, the photographs do not demand my attention. They simply remain, present in their quiet way, like familiar faces in a room where no one expects conversation to prove love. My breathing steadies further, my shoulders sink another fraction, and somewhere in the calm warmth, I understand something gentle and plain. Not everything has to be repaired tonight. Not everything has to be solved for it to be enough. Sometimes it is enough to sit beside a fire, inside a house that still knows how to hold a person. And allow the night to be kind, so I let it be kind. I let the warmth stay, I let the quiet surround me, and I let myself remain here, without rushing, without performing, simply existing in the soft, steady certainty of having returned. The fire has settled into a steady glow, no longer reaching high, only breathing in low amber pulses that warm the room without effort. I remain in the chair, listening to the soft rhythm of wood turning to ember. The house feels different now, not paused, not waiting, but quietly complete. As if my presence has closed a circle that never demanded closing. Outside, the wind moves through the trees with patient hands. The ocean continues its distant, even murmur. Nothing strains. Nothing calls. My eyes grow heavier, and I allow them to rest. For tonight, it is enough that I am here. The house does not need promises. It only needs this moment, warm, quiet, and unafraid, and in the steady hush, I let myself belong. Thank you for spending this quiet time with me tonight, for allowing yourself to slow down and simply be here. If this story helped you feel calmer or a little more at peace, you are always welcome here. You can like and subscribe, and return whenever you need another quiet place to rest, another gentle story, waiting in the dark. Now, there is nothing more you need to do, nowhere else you need to go. Just allow your breathing to become slow and easy. Feel the night, holding everything softly around you. And as sleep begins to find you, in its own quiet time, may you rest deeply, may you feel safe, and may you drift into peaceful and gentle dreams. I will be here again when you return. Good night.